I'm here on my catch pit, which is finished. This is it's the second large round catch pit, and the third one's already in progress and half full. But what this is this was an 8-foot diameter pit, 3 feet deep, and it was backfilled with a combination of charcoal and dirt, around 10% charcoal total. So, 1 scoop of charcoal, 9 scoops of dirt, basically. And any other kind of junk that I had that would be good plant food or would improve the soil. So I know I threw a bunch of old hides in here that I was, maybe hides that were partly through the process of tanning, but then they got bugs in them. I cleaned out the freezer a couple times and threw junk in here from the old freezer. Weeds, dead animals, all kinds of junk went in here. And the objective is to basically build a super soil to grow trees in. So that's why this is a big, circular pit. So I'm going to grow a tree right here. This is the center of the pit. And I'm going to grow a tree called Striblings White Nectartine, which is a disease-resistant, high-quality nectarine. And my friend Mark Albert, who lives in the area for over 30 years, says that it's his best. I think he said it was his best tree, period, out of any tree, let alone out of peaches and nectarines. It is partially resistant to leaf curl, peach leaf curl, which is a major problem here. And it's not immune. I have other peach trees that are immune to it, but this one will get a little bit and then it will just outgrow it. So that's fine too. The quality is excellent. I've grafted a test branch here on the tree right behind you there. I started researching rootstocks for peaches because I know that most of them are actually, if you buy a rootstock, I think a lot of those are actually just grown from peach pits. I thought, maybe I should use almond instead, because almond and peach are pretty much the same tree. And that might be more drought tolerant, because almonds are well known for being very drought tolerant. I don't have a lot of water and stuff to lavish on my trees, so I thought that might be good. So I tried to look it up, and there was almost nothing on using almond rootstocks for peaches until I found a reference in California Fruits, which I'm going to go get because I want to show it to you. This is California Fruits by E.J. WICKSON. Who's heard me talk endlessly about the WICKSON apple? There's also a WICKSON strawberry and a WICKSON plum, and he was a major figure in early California horticulture. 1921, Stocks for Peach, page 243. The hand shell and sweet almonds have long been used as a stock for the peach. It is held that they give a hardier, stronger root in dry, coarse soils especially, but neither have been largely used. And that's enough for me, because it sounds like a fun experiment, and my guess is it's going to work. I did find maybe one reference that said there could be some incompatibility sometimes between almond and peach, but I'm not going to listen to that. So what I've done here is I took some bitter almonds that actually were grown originally as rootstock, and this is probably a wild tree or an escaped rootstock from an old almond orchard. In fact, I met the guy who planted this orchard, actually, and owned that property down there. He's an old Indian guy. He was over 90 years old when I met him, like 5 years ago or something. And he had grown all kinds of different crops, grapes, almonds, plums, down in this big flat that he owned down there by the river. Really neat guy. I harvested these seeds from there to actually use to make almond extract, and also to use as rootstock. So I shelled the almonds, I soaked them in water, and they've been sitting in damp sawdust for like a month or so. And so a lot of them are sprouted out. They're in really great shape, perfect. I'm just going to plant about probably 6 or 8 of these right here. This is the center of the pit. I'll probably let about 3 of those grow through the season, 2 or 3 of them, the 2 or 3 best ones that seem the most vigorous and healthy. You can see they're quite sprouted out here. This one has dried up a little because the sawdust dried up a little bit. So I've got, 6 of those that look real good. I think that's 7. Since this is so fertile this year, and there's really not much growing in here, I'm probably going to plant a couple of squash plants too, or melons maybe. I think melons is better. I'd rather eat melons than squash. I want these kind of deep, and the reason I like planting these from seed is that they can grow a deep natural root system, and these guys will send down a deep tap root. I'm going to plant them pretty deep, but the soil here is very loose and it should stay loose. because I don't really expect that we're going to get a ton of rain, and I can actually mulch this a little bit with some kind of a fine mulch. I'll probably just put a bunch of charcoal on here so that the soil doesn't get crusty, and it won't dry out and it won't get all crusty and hard if it rains. Here we are some time later. You can see I have, looks like 4 seedlings there. I've actually pulled out 2 or 3 already that were kind of weak growing. You can see those ones at the back look quite a bit bigger, so I think at this point this one comes out too. Now I may water this again once or even twice, but I'll wait for a long period of time until I think it really needs it, and then I will always water it deeply, because the reason I'm using almond stock in the first place is for drought tolerance and to adapt to my conditions where I can't always take really good care and lavish water on these trees. So I want those roots to go deep, and I don't want to pamper them and have them think that they're going to get everything they need on the surface. I want them to go deep and wide and form, resilient root systems. Let's see if we have some melons over here. This is that HAOGEN melon again. Looking good. I have to cover these because the chickens will peck at them. I'm tempted to try budding one of these this year. Even now, I do have some budwood, but it's not very good. But normally I would think about waiting until these, grow for this full year and then dormant grafting them in late winter next year. And since there's 3 of them, I can graft all 3 of them if they all look healthy and just pick the one that does the best. And out of 3, 1 is likely to do, pretty well. Because grafting peaches and nectarines and almonds is a little dicey. The scions tend to dry out really fast. I mean, they're not as easy as apples and pears for sure. Okay, I have a fresh cutting here, and in each one of these leaf nodes there's a bud, and I just want to get one of those buds, and I'm going to put it on one of these stalks. Maybe I'll split this and then cut off a piece like this. Trim it flat at both ends, and then try to inset that. Ow, this knife is wicked sharp. I'm just going to try to set that in right here. I don't do very much of this type of summer grafting and budding. I'm not doing the classic bud where you take just the bud and you slip it under the bark. As a general rule, if you get good cambial contact, you can just get away with a lot, and you can do it at a lot of different times a year. I mean, just grafting in general. And here in the summertime, the tissues can heal pretty fast. I mean, I'm not sure it'll take, but again, it doesn't really matter because I have 3 of these going here. Just a little experiment to just see what we can get away with. Now, normally I'd have been able to wrap in such a way that I covered these sides where the joint is there. But this is such a small diameter that it just didn't really work out. So glue is one of the things you can use to seal grafts for household stuff. So I may let this heal for 2 or 3 weeks and then cut this off about up here somewhere. Maybe leave 2 buds up here and see if we can force that to grow out. I was editing this video a little bit, and I wrote my friend Mark Albert down in the valley and asked him a question about Striblings White, and he said, yeah, and I told him what I was doing, budding onto this almond stalk, and he said, you should chip bud that right now. And I said, I just did. And he said, well, maybe you should come down and shoot a chip budding video, because he's a big advocate for this kind of summer chip budding. So we did that, and we have a video really forthcoming. I got some nice high quality budwood from him. These are current year shoots. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to bring you guys in close to watch this, and then we will have Mark's video out within, pretty quick after this one. Okay, first we're going to select a bud, and we're going to make it, I need to look at the stalk here. The stalk is actually pretty small, So I'm going to choose a smallish section of stem. They should be about the same size. If anything, this one should be smaller, not bigger, and in this case it kind of is bigger. So Mark says it's all about the buds. We don't want buds that are elongated. I think this bud's okay. This bud's really good, and it's small. That's perfect. We're going to take a look at some buds here, and Mark Albert says it's all about the bud, selecting really good buds. This is what he would consider ideal. It is well developed and pretty big, but it's real close to the stem here. It's like real flat against the stem, and it only has one leaf scar here where one leaf was cut off. This one has 1, 2, 3 leaf scars, and the bud is elongated, so you can see how the bud is way out here, about 1/8 of an inch away from the stem. This one here, if it has a bud at all, it might have like a little bud tucked way back down in there, and it has these 4. It actually looks like this was maybe a little side branch that got cut off. So usually if there's a side branch, that means the bud that was there already grew, and there may be some little dormant buds hiding around in there, but you know, that's definitely not what you want. This one has a very small bud tucked way back in here. It has 1 or 2 or 3 leaf scars, and it's just undersized basically. So if you have a choice to look for this, that doesn't mean that none of these would work in a pinch, and you know, you just try it and it either works or it doesn't. You use what you have. But if you have a choice, you're looking for that in at least peaches and nectarines and almonds. So that's the one I'm going to use. First I'm going to make just a couple of test cuts. You know, the shape of this doesn't necessarily matter that much as long as the cambiums line up and the pieces fit really well. But I'm going to use the method that he talked about, which is makes sense. And it's a 20-degree cut down here, about 1/8 of an inch deep. So 1/8 of an inch deep vertically. And the whole thing 1.5 inches long, so about 3/4 below. I only went about half below, so I'm going to go 3/4 above. This isn't critical either. See how I'm pulling the knife along like this to make a slice? I'm not just pushing on it. That's much safer and it's much easier. So once I get in about 1/8 of an inch deep, I'm just going to cut along until I meet that. Okay, so this is a little crooked. Trim that. I don't see any reason that wouldn't work. I'd just like it to maybe taper a little bit more. So I'm going to make a couple more practice cuts. Now Mark really prefers a thin, flexible blade for this. In fact, he said this is an unsuitable knife, like a wide, rigid blade like this. But I like to use whatever I've got and be able to get away with it. And I think there's no reason you shouldn't be able to use a knife like this. So I'm having a tendency to cut too deep. But it's okay to do a little bit of trimming. That actually looks really good. Alright, I think I'm ready. This is where the leaf was. It's called the petiole. You could also call it a leaf stem. This bud looks really, really nice. I'm going to make about 1 inch long. Come in about 20 degrees. See, again, I'm pulling the knife and slicing. This wood is actually quite rigid. A little rocking is okay too. Just make sure we get deep enough, which in this case is about halfway through this stem. We come up about 1/2 inch there, and again start this slice. Not pushing very hard. Okay, now we're down in the middle. We just split down to meet this down here. That looks excellent. Take a look at that bud and just in general what this looks like. Looks like it should go right here. I'm going to cut it from here to there and just remove this bud and replace it with this one. It ran out there. I'm going to go deeper. This wood's actually pretty hard. It's not long enough. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper and quite a bit longer here. This is super awkward. Actually, just gonna take a hair off the top of this. Now I just want to hold this, look at the bark here, make sure that's lined up, and look at the other side. And again, just a little deeper here. Now you can probably imagine if you did this all the time, like professionally or whatever, it would just be a few quick cuts, not all this screwing around. Now Mark is very, very much into parafoam, which is a wax-coated, super thin plastic, and you just wrap it on, stretch it, it sticks to itself, and the bud will grow right through it. He was going to give me some, but he didn't, and that's fine with me because I'm more interested in seeing what we can get away with in terms of just like using whatever's around. I've got some plastic bag here. This is the type of bag that, you know, potting soil and manure and stuff come in that you buy, say, at the nursery. And these will usually work pretty good for grafting. And I have another piece that we'll use on the next bud. I also cut it very narrow, and that's because I want to seal as much of this as possible with the plastic and not with a sealant, which we're going to use both, but okay, this is also awkward here. Just trying to do everything so you guys can see it well. And I'm a big proponent of wrapping grafts really tightly, but in this case, it's under very little stress because there isn't any type of, you know, scion sticking out that gives you leverage against the graft union. Does that make sense? So if I have a long graft, like a long stick or something on a tree, and it's sticking out, you know, 8 inches, sometimes more. So you see I'm just kind of bypassing the bud right there. And we're actually going to scoot down right underneath the bud. So if I have a big stick sticking out, the wind, you know, birds getting bumped when you're working in the tree, anything can just really easily have a lot of leverage against the graft union to break it if you touch that thing. So I'm into wrapping those really tight. But as Mark pointed out, with this type of budding, there really is nothing to break. So this is time consuming compared to parafoam, which is just like, you know, instant. But, you know, you're going to have to go buy parafoam, and maybe you won't need to buy a whole roll of parafoam or whatever. So that's pretty well sealed there, except for the bud, and we'll seal that with either Doc Farwell's grafting wax or glue. But we've sealed all of this well enough that that glue or whatever we seal it with isn't really going to seep down into all of this joint. And this time I'm using a plastic bag strip that's kind of like a zipper seal, Ziploc type of bag. I just thought I'd try a couple different things out. Again, if you're wrapping the graft super tight, then it matters more what you use, because a lot of plastics will be too thin, and like this would be a little thin for wrapping a graft. You could make it work, but it wouldn't be ideal. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to try here this time is taking this strip, and I'm going to wrap over the top of the bud, but just leave the very, very tip of the bud poking out. Okay, so we're going to come like, there's the bud, and I'm just going to wrap it just enough that it'll be able to shoot out the top. And that's easier with this piece of plastic because it's thinner and lighter. And then I'm going to come at the top of the bud, and I'm going to scoot the plastic down like right underneath the bud and tuck it. So really there's almost nothing left exposed. And the part that we have to seal is just really minimal. And that's working a lot better with this piece of plastic because it's so much thinner. Okay, so now we have just a really small amount exposed here. It looks like the plastic slipped down to the bottom of the bud, but still very little there. And now we're going to seal that up. On this one, we're going to use Doc Farwell's grafting seal. The parafoam is really thin, and it covers everything, including the bud. And then the bud just grows right through it. But with this, we don't want that bud to dry out. and these buds are really prone to drying out. So I've covered most of the bud right there, just teasing a little bit at the top here to finish sealing that off. And this should not have any trouble breaking through that thin seal of grafting wax. This one here isn't wrapped nearly as well, and I'm just using glue on this just to mix it up a little bit. Just anywhere that there's wood or bud exposed, I want that covered. You know, in a production setting especially, I could see where that parafoam would just be amazing because it sticks to itself. You just rip off a piece, wrap it super quick, pull on it, and it breaks really easy, and then it's just sealed and done. And you don't have to take it off. Like this, I still need to cut that off later or it's going to constrict this joint. But with the parafoam, I think you can just leave it on there and it just expands and the tree will tear it off itself. And here's my chip bud from, I'm guessing, about 2 weeks ago. And I'm just gonna take off this lower wrapping for the sake of inquiry and knowledge and all that good stuff. I think there not only is healing, I think there's a lot of healing. So Mark says these can heal in 7 to 14 days, sometimes under certain conditions. It's quite warm. So I think in this shot with the macro lens, you'll be able to see the callus tissue right along this cut edge between the bud chip right here and the stalk. There's a light colored tissue. It's kind of rounded looking. That's callus or new, it's new growth bark and wood trying to heal up that wound. But just in case, I'm going to coat this whole thing with grafting wax, like grafting seal, grafting paint. Glue would probably work too, or latex paint or something like that. I'll paint actually the whole stem either with grafting seal or white paint or anything to reflect the sun and prevent it from sunburning. And then I'm also going to shade all of these buds until they're well healed and starting to grow. We're just going to cut this off. So this is the cool thing about this technique, is it can heal really fast. We cut that off, remove everything down here that might want to grow. Definitely any leaves, but also kind of rub out some buds. And we want the stalk to panic and say, oh my God, an animal came and ate me, or I got broken off. We're going to just grow now. And we want it to grow this bud. Like there's another bud right here, right behind. I'm taking that out. I'm just going to pick it off. I probably could just cut closer here, but once this grows, and I'm sure it's going to grow, then I'll cut this back closer. So there you go. Now hopefully this will just start growing within a few days. I would see a shoot and it would grow very rapidly. So the other thing I'm going to do with these is push them to grow. I'm going to water them and fertilize them. Right now I'm going to use a liquid fertilizer so that it's immediately available. Like as soon as it hits those roots, they're going to start taking it up. I have some chicken manure tea that's already ready. It's been soaking in water. It's just, chicken manure and water. Urine diluted with water is excellent. Both of those have a lot of nitrogen and they're going to push growth really fast. So that means that the joints are going to heal faster, and then when I cut it off, the shoots are going to grow faster because, I want these shoots to grow as much as possible this year after they're cut off. In probably as little as 7 days, like 7 to 10 days, I'll probably start checking these. Like I might check one of them, or I might just cut them off. I probably won't wait the 20 days that Mark kind of recommended as a safe amount of time, just because this one looks so good. So I grew this from a seed this year, and I could get it grafted and get a shoot ready, and then my tree's off to a great start next year. Make sure you get the lower stalk of these, because if that gets sunburned badly, it's game over. So I use fir branches like this a lot for shading seedlings and stuff. I mean, they're available year-round. They're arranged real flat like this, so they make a perfect kind of little sunshade. Stick them in the ground, especially if I've got seedlings that are real overgrown maybe, and it's a heat wave, and they just they can really benefit for some shade sometimes, and this is perfect. This should help a lot. So check this out. This is my copy of California Fruits. There's 3 different ones: California Vegetables, California Flowers, and California Fruits. And I own all of them. and it's just a really neat book. Fortunately, you can read this online. You know, it's mostly of use to Californians probably, but certainly of use to other people as well. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Let's see what he says about modified central leader. So I've been doing some stuff lately on the delayed open center and modified central leader. Here's a diagram showing how you can space the branches further apart. So there's a good space between each branch before it reaches the top for an open center type of a tree. It has been believed that this many branching form developed upon a few main branches well placed on the trunk, that's the delayed open center with these spaced out, gives a stronger tree than can be had by growing a considerable number of leaders, all starting from near the point where the tree was headed at planting, which was common in earlier California practice. Such leaders crowd each other at the point of emergence from the stem, and when laden with fruit, sway outward and break at this point. A vastly stronger tree is secured by starting but 4 or 5 branches from the lower trunk and letting them emerge from different sides of the stem and at different levels, as will be described presently. Good stuff. Cool book.